Hi, welcome to You Belong Here, the place to be for positive stories of immigrant women from all around the world. You will meet some amazing, inspiring women sharing their success, challenges, and how they are living meaningful American dreams beyond professional and financial success. You may identify with some of their stories. I'm Porcia Chen Silverberg. This production of You Belong Here is coming to you from Palo Alto, California. My guests today are Pauline Haynes and Rouslana Yaroslavsky. Pauline is a seasoned facilitator, trainer, and life coach who thrives on helping people uncover and reveal their hidden gifts and living their full potential. Rouslana is a longtime volunteer and nonprofit executive who is passionate about making a difference in her community. So, welcome again to our show. I'm so happy to have you, Rouslana and Pauline. I am so anxious to hear about your stories, how you came to this country, what brought you here, what circumstances, where are you from, and all of that. So shall we start with you, Pauline?
Okay.
All right.
So I came to this country in 1979, and I was born in Jamaica, raised in England. And what brought me to this country was not actually seeking a better life, it was seeking a different life. I was married, and my husband and I had a business making hang gliders, and we wanted to branch into ultralights. And the American Aviation Association was a lot more forgiving of how that was being done, and so that was the reason we came here. And it was very different. It wasn't that I was escaping anything or I needed to move from England. It was just another way for us to be. And I have no regrets about being here. I've lived here for so many years. I absolutely love being here. My children are here. My grandchildren were born here, well, some of them. And I'm just part of the community.
Yeah.
That's how I think of it.
That's great. Did you speak English when you came? You did, right?
Yes, unfortunately, English is the only language I speak, even though in Jamaica there's a dialect that we speak, which is derived from a bit of the Spanish and also the African language, because we were colonized, and so part of that being in Jamaica is that we had a little bit of everything. And so English has been and still is my only language.
Beautiful. What about you, Rouslana? How did you get here and what brought you here?
I came 20 years ago. Actually, was 20 years in February.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I came because of my husband. We were good friends since we were 15. So we knew each other many, many years. And I came and we got married here. And I came to Redwood City and never left.
Oh, wow. Came to Redwood City.
I came
and you
to
came to
Redwood City.
California too.
I came to California, even though a lot of my family lived on the East Coast. And the reason we came to California is because this is where our business was located. And so we had a thriving business right there in Sacramento. And most of our clients were either in the Bay Area or in the mountains, which is Tahoe. And so it was a perfect place for us to be at the time. And I've stayed in California because I actually like California, and it's been my community for so many years. I left for a short time to live in Seattle, but California is a place that I really, really like. I love the climate. I love the fact that I have a community here. And I don't know, I don't think I'm necessarily going to die here, but I like California a lot. So.
And you too, your family?
Yes,
Kids
I
were
have
grown
family here. My kids were born here, and I went through surrogacy here, which was not possible and could not have been done in Russia.
Wow. Tell me more about that.
My both kids were born here through surrogacy. Because of the medical condition, I was not able to carry pregnancy. So, and I'm very, very fortunate to be in California because of the very specific surrogacy laws that are allowing to do that.
Wow. That's interesting. There's so many wonderful things about living in this country, isn't there? And I think as a new immigrant, when you first came, you must have had some experience where you thought, what am I eating here? Or what is this holiday they're celebrating with people wearing masks and costumes? Halloween, what's that? I mean, what were some of those early years like, or something you may want to share with us?
I actually loved it. I loved Halloween. I loved all the celebrations. I embraced 4th of July. I was there celebrating and participating in the parade. I generally am a very curious person. And I am very, very fortunate to be in Redwood City community. It's a community that embraces diversity, embraces different cultures. And I felt from the very beginning that I belong here.
How nice. And you too, Pauline? Or?
Halloween is something that I didn't actually, I knew about it. In England, it would be Guy Fawkes, which is kind of a strange holiday to celebrate. And the Guy Fawkes is about the guy wanted to burn down the Houses of Parliament. And so that was actually celebrated.
Oh, wow.
And instead of Halloween. And so Halloween became one of these holidays that were just very different. It's now more of a big deal in Europe, and I think different parts of the world have now embraced it as part of just a holiday. And I think it's more of, I don't even know if I know the actual meaning of Halloween or where it started. And I actually have a friend from Transylvania, and she was actually born in Transylvania, and she actually laughs when she tells people that, because nobody believes that she's actually from there. And so I think Halloween has perhaps become more of a worldwide phenomenon, or maybe in colder countries it seems to happen more, but it's wonderful. The other holiday that we never celebrated was Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, that's right.
And I remember in England once, I'd never heard about pumpkin pie. And there's a friend of mine from Canada, and the Canadian Thanksgiving is very different than the American Thanksgiving. And so I decided that I wanted to make a pumpkin pie. And where I come from, you know, I don't have pies and pumpkins, you know, and so we tried to make a pumpkin pie, and it was an absolute disaster. And to this day, I actually do not like pumpkin pie. But what I enjoy about Halloween is about getting people together. It's about the different foods. And for a while, I would have a celebration of friends of mine from different parts of the world. And so it wasn't necessarily a tradition in turkey with potatoes and that. It could be roast duck, or it could be some Thai food, it could be Chinese food. And so it was always a potpourri of all the people that I know. And I think that's what I enjoy about it. It's about bringing people together around the commonality that feeds us, which is food.
Right.
And so I really
love
like that, yes.
I've made 2 turkeys for Thanksgiving before. One the traditional American way, and the other Chinese way, right, with soy sauce and rice. So it's really fun. I know. I think all these different holidays, we all learn to adapt and then make it our own.
Right.
Right. And during the process, so I'm curious, eating turkey, celebrating different holidays, those are all some of the common experiences we have, even though we come from such different places. I was made in Taiwan, so I was born and raised. So Taiwan, Russia, Jamaica. And I think what's really fun in talking with you is to hear our mutual love for this country. And I also know that having that love and having the feeling of belonging and feeling welcomed had a lot to do with the fact that I can communicate with people who are in my community, right? So, but learning English though, I had to learn English when I came. So it was not a smooth process. It was very difficult. And I'm curious, you already knew how to speak English, but you absolutely have an accent, right? A very exotic accent. On the first hearing, it's like, oh, she has a British accent, but actually there's something else to it. So that's really fun. And I think with your accent, it's definitely not Jamaican or British or Chinese. So I'm curious to know, you've probably heard of the term linguistic profiling or accent bias. Have you had any experience with that, or, you know, because I don't think all accents are created or treated equally.
And they're not. And I sometimes there's still some spellings that I do that is not necessarily the American way.
Oh.
Color is something that I do not spell. I don't always spell the American way, because in Europe it has a U in it, and rather than COLOR. And sometimes when I'm writing the dates, I write it differently, because here we write the month before we do that, whereas where I come from, it's the other way around. So just learning those things. But there's something interesting about communications, because at one time I had a housekeeper, and she didn't speak any English. She was from Mexico. Fabulous, fabulous woman, took great care of my children, but we communicated, not with words. I trusted her enough to be with my children. And she always did a fabulous job. So sometimes we get almost a little bit sideswiped by thinking that it's only the words that we speak that makes communication. But there's the intent behind it, and how we are perceived, and how we show up, and what it is that we do.
Very true. And Rouslana?
I had some English because I graduated from Moscow State University and I did postgrads. So English was one of the languages I had to learn. But it was a very different language. So when I came here and kind of tried to tune into business conversation, the expression like touching base, neck and neck, it was all new to me. Touch base was something that I couldn't understand for a long time. So I had to relearn the English, the British version of English that we had in Russia in the university, and move it into American business English.
Interesting.
Which is very different.
And would you agree that sometimes people make some sort of assumption that someone who speaks with an accent might be less intelligent, educated, or somehow there's just some, misperception, I think? And if you've ever experienced that, how did you overcome it? Or
I absolutely agree with you, and I had a couple of experiences when people even asked in front of me, other board members, what is she doing here? How is she on the Library Foundation board? She speaks with an accent. But I never thought about it as related to me, as strange as it is. I was thinking about it as people addressing their own needs and their own insecurities, and they just happened to be there.
That's a good way of looking at it, right? And in fact, tell us a little bit real quickly, what is your day job? What do you do now that you're here?
My day job.
Now that you're contributing to our community.
It's been a long time since I've had a day job. By that I mean it's been a long time since I've been employed by somebody else. And I worked with a well-known newspaper in Sacramento for about 17 years. Now I'm a life coach. That's one of the things I do, and I do it because I absolutely love it. I work primarily with women and the brave men who would come to me to help them when they're stuck in different parts of their lives, if it has to be social or personal or business, then I support them through that. And I'm also a wedding officiant, and so at this juncture of my life, what I like to do is to do the things that makes me happy. And in making me happy and fulfilled, it's also serving at a much bigger level. Because I think when I'm fulfilled, then I can fulfill others, because there's a satisfaction that I feel in myself. When I'm performing a wedding ceremony, to see people being brought together from different walks of life, and talk about immigrants. It's amazing the people that I have been honored to marry. They all come from different places. And when we think about immigrants, sometimes there's this misconception that all immigrants are from Mexico, or maybe it's a derogatory way that they have been perceived. But they're immigrants from all over, and if we want to be honest, this country is this absolute beautiful, beautiful mosaic of people from so many different walks of life. And I think it's in honoring each person's contribution to the whole of what makes this country so great.
I so agree. I so agree. And I know one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of yours is because you have also become such a huge community volunteer. And now, in fact, you're working in the nonprofit sector. So tell us a little bit of how you got so involved and what you're doing now.
When I came here 20 years ago, I was trying to figure out what people do for a living and how they meet each other and how social life look like in the business community mainly. So I joined Chamber of Commerce as individual member. So through Chamber of Commerce, I met a lot of small business owners and a lot of city officials, and that's how I got involved into Library Foundation. I joined the Library Foundation board in 2005 when we were raising funds for a brand new Redwood Shores library. So the Library Foundation raised $850,000 in 3 years to open brand new library.
No small change.
No, and that's I joined 2005 because I felt I want to contribute, I want to be a part of these efforts, and I want to volunteer. And I felt that this is amazing community, embracing all the immigrants and me personally, so I wanted to give back. And that was, for me, the way to give back to the community that welcomed me.
Wow.
So I joined the Library Foundation in 2005. I never left. After
The
10
best
years,
kind of volunteer.
Right.
after 10 years of volunteering, I became ED and still ED at the Library Foundation.
And I must say, it's wonderful to see an executive director who is a fellow immigrant woman, because I think that's something I personally would love to help bring more immigrant women into our nonprofit sector and our social sector, because we are bringing a whole different perspective. And it's important that nonprofits really serve nonprofits who serve immigrants or people of color have leadership that reflect that. So I think it's amazing that you're there. And Pauline, I know you did a lot of volunteering too, right?
Yeah. I volunteered with the Sacramento AIDS Foundation for about 10 years, and I worked with people living with AIDS. And it was very rewarding, even though it was very sad. And I've got to say that as a community, that my experience of it, even though they were going through such challenging times, there was an awful amount of love that was palpable within the community, because they were giving up so much, but they were also willing to give so much back. And it wasn't just about my doing something for them, it was what I was getting in return. I've also worked with My Sister's House, which is a group in Sacramento. They deal primarily with Asian women going through domestic violence, but they don't only deal with Asian women. And I also volunteered with the Community for Peace. Again, that's an organization that has to do with domestic violence, and they chose to call it a Community for Peace because they're thinking of domestic violence. It's not about the violence that they want to address. It's how do we bring about peace? Because with domestic violence, it's not just about the people or the two people involved in it. It's the children, it's everyone in the home, it's a community, it's our society. So it's about how do we bring about peace within that. And I'm not sure why I've always been drawn into doing work with, seem to be people suffering. But I don't think of it as suffering. I think of it, what is it that I have that I can make a contribution to make somebody else's life easier? And so that's the thing that gets me out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gratitude, feeling of gratitude. And as an immigrant, you always feel this because you're very thankful to the community.
Yes. Yes.
And you want to give back. And this feeling of gratitude, I think that's something that kind of put us all together as an immigrants.
I love it. And I have always said that I think most of the immigrants I know, and I think most of the immigrants in this country, are some of the most patriotic Americans I know. We love it here. We are grateful. We appreciate it all because we had to make a choice, or we consciously made a choice to be here. So the fact that we're here, we don't take anything for granted, and we absolutely know that maybe some of us who have the luxury to be elsewhere if we wanted to, but we absolutely know we're here because we want to. So I think that's just such a privilege and such a blessing. And you're right, that is a great reason for people to give back. But you know, I think a lot of people I've talked to actually have no idea how to give back. There's so many good causes, so many issues, animals, you know, planet, environment, the libraries, which is one of my personal favorites, kids, women, families, mental illness. I mean, there's just, you know, hundreds and thousands of issues. How do you have one thing or one piece of advice you can give people? How do you choose the right involvement?
My advice would be find something that is important for you personally and find the nonprofit organizations or movement that help this particular cause. Maybe you're interested in helping kids with autism. Maybe you're interested in helping homeless animals. Maybe you would like to volunteer and help somebody to start reading. And then when you find this one cause that is very important personally for you, then probably you can give back, and your gratitude to the community will be channeled to one specific cause.
That's nice. Pauline?
It's perfect, and I would say just listen to your heart. Because I think each and every one of us, we have something to give. And if we look to our neighbors, there's always someone that's needing something different than they have. And so whether it's a huge organization or it's a small organization, or whether it's something you wish to start, there's always something that's needed. And I believe it's important because we're all interconnected. And when we recognize that I have something to give, then I'm giving because it's coming from my heart. And so when I give to someone and they're giving to someone, then our interconnection just spreads out. It's like the ripple effect. And then everyone will be connected because whatever skills you have, whatever talents you have, you're sharing it. And that makes your talent so much more.
And wouldn't you agree that on one hand, when we're volunteering, we're giving our time, our service, or money, but in actuality, I think we get so much more
Absolutely.
from the experience, right? So it's one of those beautiful win-win-win all the way around, right? We win because we get to feel wonderful, and we also get to share our talents and our passion in the world, and the community benefit, and especially communities that haven't seen a lot of maybe immigrants or people like us. It's a great opportunity for them to have a deeper understanding, right? So before we leave the subject altogether, accent and learning English, you're both successful and you're both so fluent. Do you have any good advice for someone who may be struggling to learn how to speak English, someone who may be struggling to learn about the culture, you know, if they've never seen American football before, they don't know what a Super Bowl party is, or, you know, those kind of things.
Neck and neck.
Exactly, touch base, right? Well, that's a great touchdown, you know, what a score. How do they get past that? How do they navigate it?
Okay, full disclosure. I've been in this country for so long, and I've got to tell you that I still don't understand the ball. but I must admit that I've sat and I've watched the Super Bowl, and when it's a good game, I don't have to understand everything that's happening. There's an excitement that I get swept up in, and all the stuff that's happening, and you can see and just experience what's happening. For me, that's what it's about. And whether I'm really understanding all the nuances of the game or not, I'm still getting something from it. And usually there's a group of people. So there are people from, in fact, quite often when you come to my house, there are people from different parts of the world. And some of my closest friends don't come from the same places that I do. And I think that's the way we understand each other. And I have a dear friend of mine who's German. She quite often mispronounces things, and we look at each other and we laugh, and she'll say to me, there's a foreigner, and I said, yeah, there's a foreigner. So I think when you're close enough with someone, then the community gets enhanced because you can laugh about it. You can laughing, not laughing at, you're laughing with. And there's a respect that we have, and the only reason that we can relate like that is because of the friendship that we have. And that friendship began because our daughters went to the same kindergarten together. So that's a number of years that we've been together. And she's been here for longer than I have. And every so often, as she matures, she reverts to speaking more German. And sometimes I realize that I sound more Jamaican as I get older, which there's something to be said about that.
Sure,
It's where
sure.
I'm from, so it's a
And
beautiful thing.
some immigrants I've talked to actually don't want to change their accent.
No.
They're very proud of it.
Oh,
right. Although
absolutely.
sometimes
Sure.
there may be negative consequences. But I think from what I just heard, it's important for a newcomer, whether they're immigrants or not, it's important for them to show up, be open-minded,
Oh, yeah.
and
Connect
be
with other
open-hearted,
people.
connect with other
Connect with other
people,
people.
especially people outside of their
Right.
Yeah.
little community, perhaps, their own ethnic community, or just be willing to embrace these changes, right?
Also, go to the library.
Go, go to the library, of course.
If you want to know what people do for living here, go to the library. Read the newspapers,
Right.
local newspapers.
Absolutely.
See what they're discussing, what kind of local
Even in
events
the
you can
internet
go
age,
and
it's important.
attend local events.
Attend
Just show
local
up.
events. Just show up, right? And if anyone's
what's important.
self-conscious of their English, what do you say to them?
Volunteer. Volunteer. Do something with your hands. You don't necessarily need to teach. You don't necessarily need to use your language right away.
Right.
Volunteer with your hands.
You're right.
Help somebody to put together event. Help somebody to do wiring, move chairs.
That's true. That's true. Rebuilding together. Help them build a
absolutely.
playground, build a house, or
And
paint.
it's easier to learn your vocabulary. It's easier to learn your new language when you have project together.
That's a really, really good tip. So as we wrap up, and I wish we can keep talking because I love hearing your experiences. If there's someone listening who may not know a whole lot about immigrants or just is open to learn new aspects or new perspectives, what is one thing, if you have one thing you can share that you'd like to share with someone who doesn't know, who may not know about immigrants?
Wow.
That's a hard one.
It's a hard one, and it's a really interesting one. And I say it's interesting because we're all immigrants in the broader sense of the term. We're all immigrants, except for the indigenous peoples of this country. So we're all
Absolutely.
immigrants. And I can't think of anywhere we could go where you wouldn't encounter an immigrant. And so for me, I prefer to not put the label because we're so conditioned by labels. And if we say you're an immigrant, it presupposes something. If we look at each other as human beings, what can I learn from you? What can I give to you? What can I teach you?
Excellent. Real quick, what's your one thing?
Gratitude. Again, we're
Gratitude.
back to gratitude.
Beautiful.
Learn about your neighbors
Okay.
and appreciate what they can give you. And
Thank you.
again, give your gratitude back.
And I'm grateful for you for being here today. And now, Pauline, Rouslana, and I would love to hear from you. We talked about so many interesting things today. I'm curious, what's one thing that resonated with you, and what actions are you inspired to take? Please go to youbelongherefoundation.org and leave a comment. Thank you for watching. And You Belong Here is committed to infusing a plethora of positive immigrant women's stories in our community. Stay tuned for future shows. I'm Porcia Chen Silverberg. Thanks for watching. And remember, you belong here. Thank you. Thank you. I'm grateful for both of you. I'm grateful for you.
Whether you're different, same ignorant or intelligent, whether you tell the truth, lie or embellish it, whether you live in gratitude or for the hell of it, it doesn't really matter, it's still one single fellowship. Whether you've been lustful or living celibate, whether you're an optimist or only see the negative, whether you're dead broke or rich from inheritance, doesn't really matter, we're made of the same sediment. Whether you got a family or single parenting, or you're Asian, African, European or American, whether you pray to God or atheist is irrelevant, cause what you got inside is the same, it's all your preference.